to try and unilaterally change the status quo. We have seen this in Galwan a couple of years ago. We are seeing this now in Tawang. And if indeed this is part of a larger strategic design, then how should India respond? But all of that and more coming up over the next 30 minutes. But first, the story of how this latest clash at Tawang, this latest friction point, also translated into fireworks in Parliament.
PLA ट्रुप्स ने तवांग सेक्टर के यांगसे एरिया में लाइन ऑफ एक्चुअल कंट्रोल पर अतिक्रमण कर स्टेटस को एक तरफा बदलने का प्रयास किया। चाइना के इस प्रयास का हमारी सेना ने दृढ़ता के साथ सामना किया है। अध्यक्ष महोदय,
Defence Minister Rajnath Singh informing Parliament that Indian soldiers thwarted attempts by Chinese troops to unilaterally change the status quo in Arunachal Pradesh, Tawang, last week and compelled them to return to their posts. During the confrontation, clashes broke out between the Indian and Chinese side. It happened in a place called Yangtze, about 30 kilometers northwest of Tawang. India has been building border infrastructure here, so have the Chinese. The clash happened on the night between 8th and 9th December. About 300 Chinese troops tried to capture icy heights around Yangtze. If either side manages to capture the heights at 17,000 feet, it would give them visibility up to 25 to 30 kilometers on either side. Hence, there's no need for patrolling in the harsh winter months. More than 2 years after the deadly Galwan clashes, Chinese troops turned to the same playbook. While no lethal weapons were used, PLA troops were armed with clubs, sticks and machetes. Around 6 soldiers were injured on the Indian side. The number of injuries on the Chinese side are believed to be far more.
भारतीय सेना ने बहादुरी से पीएलए को हमारी टेरिटरी में अतिक्रमण करने से रोका और उन्हें उनकी पोस्ट पर वापस जाने के लिए मजबूर कर दिया। अध्यक्ष महोदय, हमारे किसी भी सैनिक की न तो मृत्यु हुई है और न ही कोई गंभीर रूप से घायल हुआ है।
But while India stood firm amid Chinese aggression, the opposition saw opportunity to target the government.
And why I say that is that why are they hiding behind the bravery of our Indian soldiers? Where is their political leadership? Where is their bravery?
But there is a need for a wider and a deeper discussion on why China is doing that.
Home Minister Amit Shah countered Congress with this big attack.
कांग्रेस सरकार ने चीन की धमकी के बाद हमारे रोड और वाइटल बॉर्डर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर्स का निर्माण डैम चौक में रोक दिया कि राजीव गांधी फाउंडेशन को 2005-6 और 6-7 के वित्तीय वर्षाल में चीनी दूतावास से 1,35,00,000 रुपए का अनुदान प्राप्त हुआ था।
अरे उसका इसका क्या संबंध है? तुम अगर हमारी गलती है तो फांसी पे लगाओ, लेकिन इससे क्यों जोड़ रहे हो? देश की सुरक्षा है।
As the war of words continues, are we headed for a full-blown conflict with China?
All right, let's bring in our full panel that's joining us tonight here on Brass Tag. Shehzad Poonawalla is BJP National Spokesperson. Dr. Shama Mohammed, Spokesperson of the Congress Party. General Retired VP Malik is former Chief of Army Staff. Achal Malhotra, former diplomat. Dr. Shrikant Kundapalli is Professor of Chinese Studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University and a China expert. And Alok Bansal is Director with the India Foundation. General Malik, I'll start with you first. What is your best understanding, sir, of what exactly happened in Tawang? Because all of these reports of, unsophisticated weapons, clubs and machetes, all of this, we've seen this in Galwan as well, and now we're seeing this in Tawang. Is this part of some kind of larger design, strategic design by the Chinese? And if so, what's the aim?
Good evening, Zaka. Good to be on your program. We have to see all these incidents holistically. This particular incident was a deliberately planned incident. There is no doubt, because before 9th December, they started collecting additional troops in this area. And this incident took place at 3 a.m. in the morning. So obviously it was planned. And it is a disputed area, no doubt about it. It has been so for a long time. But the manner in which they tried to intrude this time, that shows that certain amount of deliberate planning had been done. Now, when you look at all these incidents which have taken place, or not only over 2.5 years since Galwan took place, but even earlier, the Chinese are not interested in marking line of actual control on the map.
Okay.
One can keep questioning that. We have been asking them to do that. And unless you do that, you cannot avoid such incidents taking place when troops are eyeball to eyeball along the line of actual control. Similarly, one has to also see their other actions, the new villages which have come up along the line of actual control, which not only have civilians, but a larger number of ex-servicemen and intelligence people, etc. The kind of infrastructure which has come up all along the line of actual control so fast, and the kind of political statements that have been made by the Chinese political leadership. The law, border defense law has been passed recently. All these are indicating that there is no let up. These people will continue to put pressure on us.
Okay.
And also, when such incidents take place, then escalation also cannot be ruled out. And I'm sure they would know as much as we know about these things.
I want to bring in our political spokespersons, Shehzad first and then Dr. Shama Mohammed. Shehzad, you know, the question that the opposition is asking today, all parties, all opposition parties, I think Congress, TMC, Mr. Owaisi, all of them moving adjournment motions asking for a discussion. Two questions. One, this incident happened on the intervening night of 8th and 9th. Why is the country knowing about this on the 12th, and that too after media reports at a time when Parliament is in session? And two, the question that they're asking is, doesn't such an important issue deserve a full-fledged discussion in Parliament?
Answering your first question first, the incident took place on that date. After that, there was a flag meeting, and clearly you don't, and it was also a weekend, so Parliament was technically not in session, came to session on Monday. The flag meeting took place on 11th, and after that, the entire information was put out, not by the media report, but by a press release of the PRO of Defence in Tezpur. So the Congress party is actually lied. Supriya Shene lied when she said that this was revealed by sources. It wasn't true. And they've lied over and over again. And that's my fundamental problem. Why play Rajniti over an issue of Rashtaniti? When the surgical strike is announced by the DGMO, you ask for body bags. When the Balakot airstrike is announced by the forces, you say, what's the proof? Only Chil Kawas were killed. This kind of attacking the manobal of our forces, when we must all stand one and celebrate the valor of our forces, salute the valor of our forces. And let me tell you the fundamental difference that's taken place pre-2014 and post-2014. You remember there was once upon a time a defense minister who got up and said that the best strategy is not to bring any infrastructure along the LAC. You remember that that statement made by A.K. Antony? Yeah. Well, let me tell you first, before even I come to RGF and the kind of donations they've taken or the MOUs they've signed, these are all irrelevant discussions in the sense that, you know, everybody knows about the Congress. But let me tell you what we've done. And then let Shama Mohammed answer why wasn't this done so many years. 9 new tunnels have been built. 2.5 kilometers, the Sela tunnel has been built. 11 more tunnels are planned. The road projects which adds connectivity through Western Ladakh and Zanskar Valley, alternative connectivity has been done. The DSDBO road, which is basically advanced landing ground near the LAC, that has now been made, is being made into class 70 specification. We've created habitats for 22,000 troops, not just along the current sector that we're talking about, but even Arunachal and Sikkim, where there can be habitats for our troops there, storage facilities for 450 tanks and howitzers. We have also put our forward Rafales forward. We've got our troops now there. In fact, the Chinese were surprised by the intensity with which they were repelled, and not just now.
No,
even
fair enough. No one is discounting the fact that infrastructure. One second, I'll come to the RGF and Congress Party, CCP connections and all that. No, one second. So the thing is, yes, infrastructure has been built, no doubt about it. And some would argue, and I want Shama Mohammed to respond. Why was infrastructure stopped through the period of the UPA? You had a defense minister, Shehzad is right, when Mr. Antony in Parliament said that the best thing to do is not to build any infrastructure there. What did the Congress do in a way that we can defend these disputed territories, which Shehzad has just outlined what Mr. Modi's government has done over the last 8 years?
Okay, now give me the same time as you've given Shehzad without interrupting, please, Zaka. You're a senior journalist. Now let's understand one thing. He keeps pointing fingers at the Congress party. During the Congress party's time, if there was any issue, we would call an all-party meeting and brief the opposition. We were in the government. Our question today is, Why this hide and seek? Like he said, this is my country, and it's not the Bharatiya Janata Party defending. It is our army which is defending. And we all salute the army today. It is because of our army, how they defended and got the Chinese out, that we are still here, we are safe, all those things. But the issue today is that he talks about the Congress Party. Let me ask him one thing. 20 soldiers were massacred in 2020. Isn't it? And what does our Prime Minister say? Na koi gusa hai, na koi military post liya hai. Means nobody has entered our territory and no one has taken any military post. That emboldened China, because that was what China was saying. Number two, after that, we in 2021 to 22 did business, trade with them with $115 billion. That is the highest, one of the highest in 5-year period of 43.3%. Why did, he keeps pointing fingers at us. Why did PM CARES take money from Xiaomi, 10 crores, 1 crore from Vivo and the other Chinese companies if after the Galwan incident? He has to explain that to us. You take money, you do trade with China. We are at a trade deficit and they are at a trade surplus. You must show that we will not do trade with them. We will not do these sort of things.
Okay.
And the other thing, we have them inside Depsang. We all know that the maximum number of square kilometers is gone in Depsang, 900 square kilometers. But they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to tell us anything about it. And the other thing is, we were patrolling in Pangong so up to 8, finger point 8. Now we are at 3. So why? And why did we ever give up the most crucial Kailash range that could have been used for leveraging?
Okay, you've asked a whole bunch of questions. Let me get Shehzad to respond, and then I'll go back to the academics after that. Yeah, Shehzad, the fundamental question is, when the attack happened last time, PM said na koi gusa na koi kisi ko ghusne denge. What happened in Tawang? Did they gusao? Did we gusao into their territory? What exactly happened?
Okay. First of all, look at the lies that the Congress peddles. She just said that the Chinese are at finger 3. Here's a statement of the Northern Army Chief. Indian Express has quoted him. Please read. They've been pushed beyond finger 8. But yet she says that finger 3, they are on finger 3. Is it a fact? You know it's not a fact. Now let me tell you the other lies that they say. I'm glad that they're talking about our army today. These are the same people who said Sadak ka Gunda for the army. When the surgical strike was announced by the DGMO, not by a political figure, they said it's Khoon ki Dalali and Farzical strike. Forget that. They say, why don't we have an all-party meeting? Madam, all-party meeting is all fine, but please tell me which political party has a standing MOU with the Chinese leadership, won't disclose it, takes money into their RGF fund from the Chinese government and the Chinese embassy, and after that you talk about trade deficit. It was $1 billion in 2004-05. It left at $36 billion. That's a percentage increase of 2,000% when you left in 2013-14. Today it's $55 billion. That's a 42% rise. Those who increase the trade deficit by 2,000%.
No, one second. I don't think the trade deficit or the trade surplus is an answer to what happened in Tawang or what happened in Galwan.
Just give me 30 more seconds.
Okay,
just
30
more seconds. Now let me tell you the holistic approach that we've taken. An economic cost has been imposed on China. Please, madam, please don't interrupt me. Madam, please don't interrupt me. I'm answering everything. Acha, I'll answer about the PM cares. You'll have to pipe down. Let me answer about PM cares.
Okay, he's answering. He's answering.
She spoke about Vivo and Xiaomi. She doesn't know that there's been a massive crackdown on Redmi, Xiaomi and Vivo and Oppo by the ED. So if you've taken money from them, why are we cracking down on them? This is the half-read knowledge of the Congress spokesperson.
Zaka, okay.
Please let me complete.
All right. Okay. One second. We have 40
point.
minutes. Let me go to the academics
30
also,
seconds
please.
More. It will break the flow.
Okay.
30 seconds more. I beseech you. Now let me tell you the approach that we've taken. One, we imposed a strategic cost. We've told you about the kind of infrastructure we're building. 2, a military cost. This is not a government that sits back. It doesn't say that, oh, 26/11 happened, we will give them MFN status. We do surgical strike, we do Balakot strike. 3, we've done an economic cost. They're out of 5G, they're out of highway construction, apps were banned, we pushed them out of the phone market, we are banning them from wherever we can.
Okay.
There's a diplomatic cost.
Okay, one second. I need to, there are 3 other guests. One second. There are 3 other guests. Please, I'll come back to you. Let me go to the 3 other guests. Let me ask Dr. Kondapalli. Let me ask,
they could have got back the 38,000 square kilometers they took.
Let me ask Dr. Kondapalli, as a China watcher, we've been seeing this pattern, not just Galwan and Tawang that's happened just now. But is there a fear that this has become the new normal? This is now the modus operandi by the Chinese troops, where they're not using guns or armaments or sophisticated weapons. They're using, almost primitive clubs and sticks and spikes to physically injure troops and then violently press their claims. And if so, how may India respond and how should India respond? Because there's also the larger question of, we've had 20 rounds of border talks. It doesn't seem like getting to any kind of conclusion anytime soon.
Well, the Chinese have also mobilized very sophisticated equipment like the T-15 tanks, lightweight tanks. They have also mobilized J-20 aircraft, Y-20 transports, and Z-20 helicopters. In addition, they also have the 5G networks and fiber optics. And of course, the Chinese patrols can come to the LAC in about a few hours, while the Indian soldiers require nearly 2 to 3 weeks to reach the line of actual control. So they have also all those sophisticated equipment, which means that India needs to now prepare for conventional deterrence in a larger measure, which I think we have already begun. If you have seen the Prime Minister's visit to Arunachal Pradesh, where we have now a new airport, plus the east to west highway project that is under construction with nearly 40,000 crore project. And of course, we also have the deployments from the Army and the Air Force and others. So the new normal is not exactly the barbed wire fencing. These are gray zone tactics to avoid the 93, 96, 2005, 2013 CBM's agreements. However, we have decided in Galwan and aftermath that we will use firepower if necessary to defend ourselves. So there is a political decision taken in that regard.
Okay.
And which means that we may even change the ground dynamics if the Chinese keep escalating in this manner.
Okay.
So that is quite...
Let me ask Colonel Alok Bansal, what Professor Kondapalli said, and I think he's right. What Galwan has done is change the nature of warfare or change the nature of contact, as it were, between India and China at these friction points. What he talked about conventional deterrence. After Galwan, India is now deploying anywhere between 8 to 10 brigades worth of men in eastern Ladakh. After what happened in Tawang, do you suspect that we'll have to do something similar between 5 to 10 brigades of men? Essentially, this is the LOCization of the line of actual control. All right, can I ask Achal Malhotra that? We've lost Colonel Bansal's line. Yes, Mr. Malhotra.
Yes. If I understand your question, you are asking as to what should we be doing?
Yeah.
And should we convert the line of actual control into line of control? Well, Raka, the main issue is in all the debates which start after an incident like this happens, the core issue as to why China is doing this, there is no plausible explanation. I have not come across any plausible explanation for what happened in Doklam, later in Galwan, and now here. So why? But one thing is clear. What is clear is that China has absolutely no intention to resolve the border dispute. They are not interested in demarcation or delineation of the borders at all. There has been absolutely no progress on that. And probably that was the reason that when it was not happening and there was a desire to engage China, we had put all these issues on the back burner and we had devised certain confidence building measures through those agreements of 93, 96, 2005, etc., etc. But they are not working. So we don't have a clear-cut answer as to what we should be doing to face this challenge from China, except that in recent years, we have intensified our efforts to match the kind of infrastructure they are building on their side. and we are trying to ensure that we are not taken in by any surprise at any point of time. I think under the present circumstances, this is the only plausible course of action, that we strengthen our defense preparedness, and at any point of time we should be able to handle or tackle the situation that arises. Because I'm saying that because the pressure on China, the international pressure on China, about which people were talking about a couple of years ago, is not the kind of pressure we thought it will be. Even Joe Biden has declared openly that there are many areas where they will have to engage China. And we ourselves also, although we have said, defined a bottom line that no talks unless there is peace and tranquility at the border, but in many other areas like trade and etc., it's a business as usual. In fact, trade is increasing.
So let me ask Colonel Alok Bansal, the point that both Mr. Malhotra as well as earlier before him, Dr. Kondapalli were making is that after Galwan, India is now having to commit anywhere between 8 to 10 brigades worth of men around eastern Ladakh. After this Tawang incident, should we prepare for a more conventional deterrence vis-a-vis China, almost like what happens on the LOC? Do we have to do that on the LAC? And more importantly, if infrastructure building on the Indian side is the reason why China is doing this from time to time, then all the more reason to put more troops to defend that new infrastructure. You have to unmute yourself, Captain Bansal.
There is no doubt that there is some amount of tension as far as this border is concerned, and I think Chinese are concerned with the pace of infrastructural development. Because after 62, for decades, there was a growing perception that we should not build any infrastructure because that would prove to be a defense, because the infrastructure will allow Chinese to come down. But in last few years, we have phenomenally built infrastructure, and especially in Arunachal, the Trans-Arunachal road which is coming up, which is coming along the international boundary and which is going from east to west, will allow Indian Army to shift forces from one valley to another. Now, you had a question whether should we go for conventional deployment like LOC. To my mind, no, that would be infructuous. Why do we need to do that? If we have built infrastructure, we can move troops from one portion to another easily. And Chinese troop presence still is not as much as the Pakistan has along LOC. So we don't have that sort of an intensive, because Chinese generally remain in the background. They come once in a while, create this sort of incident, and then again go back. They withdraw. So we should be in a position to tackle this. Deploying our troops unnecessarily all along the LAC in larger numbers, would, to my mind, would be extremely
So why then are the Chinese doing this? If it is patrolling tactics, we've seen patrols, for years now. The Chinese come into what we perceive as our territory, we go into what they perceive as their territory. Why have these sort of unsophisticated attacks increased in the last couple of years?
See, I think what I perceive is, in this particular case, I think Chinese are testing waters. They are seeing our resolve, how resolute we are as far as the sanctity of LAC is concerned. And although this fact has come to light, but to best of my knowledge, for last about 10-15 days, there has been some tension on the eastern border all along. In fact, Indian troops had moved to forward deployment. There were also reports that certain leaves, etc., had been cancelled. So there has been some tension even before this incident has happened. And I think Indian troops were prepared, and that's why we saw an immediate befitting response was given to the Chinese, and they were forced to withdraw.
As a larger question, if I can ask General Malik, there is a power differential between India and China. I guess some of this, incidents that we're seeing in Tawang or earlier before that in Galwan, is China trying to convey the message that they are the bigger power in this part of the world. Clearly, that is not acceptable to India, and India has to defend its territory. But in the interim, when this power differential is there, General Malik, what is it that India can do to A, build its defense capabilities, and B, more importantly, because this is where the catch-22 happens. The more India goes into a US embrace with things like Quad, the more the Chinese use that as justification for incidents like Tawang and Galwan.
Zaka, we may not be having adequate deterrence at the moment, but definitely we have acquired a certain amount of dissuasion capability. all along. And I do not agree with people. I believe that already it has become, situation along the LAC has become like the LOC. And to say that our troops are not there at the moment, we have strengthened our troops both in the western sector as well as on the eastern sector. And of course, there are certain build-up that is taking place in terms of infrastructure and certain other capabilities we are building, and we are trying it as fast as possible. This has to continue. And as I said, ईंट का जवाब पत्थर से देना पड़ेगा along the line of control. And if they want to escalate it, we should also be prepared to escalate it, because they have been testing this ground for how many years now? So we have to build these capabilities, and it might take some more time to build deterrence part, but dissuasion part, I think we've already done quite a bit, and we can do some more to build it further.
All right.
And the other aspect is that we have to now work out a complete strategy which involves not only the military, but also the diplomacy, the trade, and the political aspect. We have to give them answers politically when required, and not just sort of keep quiet about it. Similarly, trade, we have not taken effective measures till now. That is also part of our strategy toward China.
Sure.
China's attitude towards India, I do not foresee changing for the next 25, 30 years.
Okay,
And
so I'll ask that to the political spokesperson.
To say that I will not have relations with the
Yeah,
USA.
no,
We will have relations with whoever we feel it is in our
of
national
course.
interest.
So
we cannot bow down to their
yeah, I'm coming to you, Shama. Shehzad, responding to the Chinese on the border can't just be restricted to military action. Please answer the question that Shama asked. Why are we now doing record trade with the Chinese? 115 or 120 billion was the trade in 21-22. More importantly, you banned apps. They've found a circumvented way of coming through apps. You are saying ED is cracking down against Chinese phone makers. They are very much available in stores or in online places. Point is, where is the holistic approach of acting against China? Just banning firecrackers for Diwali is not going to cut it.
I don't think you should categorize the response of the Indian military might.
No, not the military. I'm saying the non-military response.
Zaka, you're far too experienced to make that kind of comment. And
no, not military might. That's why I'm clarifying. Non-military response.
Whether it's military or whether it's the overall, Shama Mohammed, you're a government that parceled off all our economic and territorial interests. Can you please pipe down for a moment while I answer? Thanks. It's not eat ka jawab patthar se, it's eat ka jawab lohe se. And let me just list out a few things that we've done. First of all, the only way to deal with a bully is to stand up to the bully. I'm not taking names, but I think the phrase is quite relevant here. The point is that when Galwan happened, we went ahead and we constructed that bridge on Galwan. Is it not a fact? We've not backed down. We are doing whatever it is. In fact, the person who's put out the story in the Tribune, you must go and see his Twitter timeline. I don't want to emphasize, we are sitting at 17,000 feet, overseeing both sides of the LAC. When they came, they got what they deserved. And we have other infrastructure there, which I don't want to, as a spokesperson of the ruling party, elaborate upon, but it's there on the person's Twitter timeline who's put out the story. We can go and see it. We've not restricted our action to banning a few apps. We've banned and we've taken action on the economic front. Holistic actions have been taken to the extent that they are out of 5G, they are out of many other strategic and economic sectors, which is affecting them. But more importantly, we are also building a capacity when it comes to Atmanirbhar Bharat. Then coming to the military might, we've put our best infrastructure there. We are building infrastructure, we are building roadways, connectivity, but we are also putting our military infrastructure there, from the Rafales to the S-400 systems. Everything else is being put there.
No, you made that point earlier.
Let me come to another point.
One second. Shama, I have a specific question, and the question is, when Shehzad says Chinese companies can't bid for 5G in India, we've seen that. Chinese companies are out of major infrastructure projects, railways, etc. We've seen that as well. A trade deficit is not going to come down overnight. We have a record trade deficit with the United States as well.
Just give me 30 more seconds.
That's not going to... Let us speak. Please, Shehzad, please.
This is not that. Let me speak.
Yeah, I'm listening to you. Yeah.
No, the thing is, he was saying now trade is not, we have banned these apps. The trade, I mean, we have a record trade with America, but look at this. When our soldiers have died, our imports have gone up. We should reduce it. Isn't it the time of Atmanirbhar Bharat? $75 billion is the imports. Can you go and check that? That is one. Number two, we keep saying that we are lying, we are lying. Who is Tapir Gao, Bharatiya Janata Party MP? In 2019, he said in Parliament, history will not be nice to me if I don't tell the truth. They have entered Arunachal. I don't know why my party is not talking about it, why the media is not covering about it. Okay. Now, you had asked one question, why the Chinese are doing it right now much more than before. The Chinese are doing it, but the Prime Minister of India said, nobody has entered our territory and no military post is taken. So they have got emboldened because the Prime Minister
But
is
Shama,
saying
there
exactly
were
what they are
incursions
doing.
happening
Also,
even when
let me
UPA
finish.
was in power. Depsang, Demchok, 2013, 2014. There were incursions even when Manmohan Singh was
There
Prime
were
Minister.
incursions, but we never lied about it. We never said there were no incursions. We fought back. We said the truth. Now, what is happening is the Prime Minister is on the side of the Chinese when our soldiers have died. Now, he keeps saying that, the Congress party has this relationship with the Chinese. Who is the Chief Minister of India or the only person who have gone 18 times to China? Narendra Damodar Das Modi. Who, Mr. Nitin Gadkari, why did he go in 2011 to China? I can tell you a number of people with the Bharatiya Janata Party have gone to China. And number three, very
No, but
important.
would you like to
when there was
clarify
a
once again,
human rights
Dr. Shama
violation,
Mohammed, after which
when
I'll
there
come to
was a
Shahzad. No, once again.
violation.
Do you like to clarify why the RGF Foundation was getting 1.35 crore rupees from the Chinese embassy? Would you want to clarify on the BJP
let me tell
saying
you one
why
thing.
was Rahul Gandhi whining and dining with the Chinese ambassador when Galwan was happening?
Doklam.
What is
No,
this?
that
Sorry, when
Rahul
Doklam was
Gandhi-
happening.
let me finish. Okay. I want to answer that.
What is this 2008 MOU between the Congress Party and the Communist Party of China? Will you explain that?
Now I'm going to tell you that. I want to ask, he says whining and dining. What nonsense is that? Where was he whining and dining? Never was there any whining and dining. Now, when you are part of the government, the Chinese were not invaded. We had no incursions at that point of time. There will be some talks. But then I want to ask, why is Ajit Doval's son doing business with the Pakistanis? Everybody knows that. So can he answer that?
Those
We also
claims
heard the
you're
India
making on your own
Foundation has
expense.
got from the Chinese money. So why are they getting money? We want to see
Now, can
what
I
is the
come in?
violation.
Okay.
They keep saying
Zaka,
the
first
Rajiv
of all-
Gandhi Foundation has done some violations.
Zaka-
That's what Amit Shah comes out on television and says. Show me the violation,
Zaka,
and I want to
Okay.
ask him today.
Okay.
Who was the one who invited the ISI to investigate
one
Pathan?
second. That's a separate matter.
Who? Tell me the
Shehzad,
perpetrators
what
who
is the,
invite.
what
We have
is
never
the,
done the
one second,
traitors
Shama,
are-
one second. Calm down, please. What is the FCRA violation of these guys getting 1.35 crores? And frankly, it happened in 2008 or 9. What is that got to do with what happened in Tawang last week?
Well, first of all, let me answer this, but let me come to the larger points. First of all, the FCRA laws and regulations are very clear that as a political party and its outfit, you can't take donations, and especially from foreign entities. And if you don't take the prerequisite the
But RGF
clearances,
is not a political party, it's a foundation.
No, but it was taken for a pretty much a political purpose. They can contest it in court if it is a illegal cancellation, first of all. Secondly, what work is Rajiv Gandhi Foundation doing? Please explain why did you take the Chinese embassy money and the Chinese government money, and what research did you do? You could put it out in the public domain. Secondly, she is wrong when she says that they were not in government when the Doklam issue happened, and at that time Rahul Gandhi was with the Chinese ambassador. Here is a picture of the entire family under the Chinese tent. What were you trying to do? And Doklam, this is not the first time that the Chinese were building infrastructure in that area. But how many times was it contested between 2004 to 14? 600 incursions took place between 2010 to 13 as per Shyam Saran. 640 square kilometers was occupied. Demchok, Doomchili, Tiapang, Chabji Ghati before 2014. What action did they take? The only action they took was taking in the Chinese money into their RGF accounts. What action did they take? A.K. Antony stands up in Parliament. Now, please, madam, please don't interrupt.
No, I've given you more than ample time, Shama. Shama, come on.
This is not the.
No, last thing you should say on this debate is you are not given any time.
This is not fair.
I can ask the other neutral guests how much time they got compared to how much the political spokespersons got. Anyway,
Obstruct the flow. Let me complete.
This is
Zaka
not
in
done.
30
He's
seconds.
just going
This
on
is
and
not
on, and
fair.
I'm not
This
giving
is
my
not
time to
fair.
speak.
you are given
I
more
have-
than your share of
Why did
time,
they
Shama.
This kind of
Why did
interruption
they
is not
ask
required.
him in the
Zaka,
United
this
Nations?
is not this is not
Okay,
fair.
one second. This is
This
not
is not
going
fair.
anywhere if both
Let
of you.
But
No,
I
no.
was not the offender
So,
here.
okay.
She was
Why
the
did-
intruder.
Okay.
Now let me
Why
complete
did
my
the
point.
State of China?
Zaka, please let me
Why
complete
Okay.
my point. Why are you subjecting me to this?
Finish your point. 30 seconds. I need to go back to the experts again. Yeah.
I am saying that A.K. Antony got up in Parliament and made a statement that no infrastructure is the best policy. Can Shama Mohammed, with all her seriousness, defend that kind of approach? towards national security.
Okay, Shama, I'll give you 30 seconds. You respond to his charge, and then I have to go back to the experts.
Who signed those border agreements which do not allow the use of firearms?
Let her respond.
It was 93, 96.
Let her respond. Shehzad, yield please. Yeah, Shama.
So he says now that they are doing a lot of infrastructure development. The Chinese have doubled the infrastructure development. I want to know why the Prime Minister of this country lies to his people, saying that nobody has entered the Chinese territory.
Shama, this is the third time you're saying that in the last 30 minutes. So at least agree that I've given you time to make that point 3 times in the last 30 minutes.
You're not allowing me to continue. No, September this year, the 16th Commander Corps meeting between China and India has taken place. Why are these meetings taking place? For disengagement of hot springs. So why are these meetings taking place if nobody has entered? Number one, I want to ask. He has not answered about Tapir Gao, their own member of parliament, who says that they have entered Arunachal very deep.
All right. I'm going back to the experts. I'm going back to the experts. I want to go back to Professor Kondapalli. 1 second. One second, Shama. I'm pulling back. I want to go back to Professor Kondapalli. Please, let's have him on the Professor Kondapalli, again, I come back to the larger strategic response. Obviously, India can't stop building infrastructure in the border areas. That pace will continue. And in that interim, as China tests these waters, as one of the guests said, does India have any other option? Because right now, diplomatically too, and I keep going back to this, the foreign minister said in Parliament last week, you cannot have a normal relationship, a normal bilateral relationship, until this border question is settled. The Chinese approach seems to be, let's put the border on the back burner for now. Let's focus on other areas like trade and people to people and so on and so forth. And let's try and have a semblance of a normal relationship. Clearly, there is a difference in which both countries want to approach. And I don't believe you can have a normal bilateral relationship till the boundary question is, at least the friction points, Depsang, Demchok, etc., the others, are resolved. All right, Dr. Kondapalli, can you keep your phone next to you? We're not able to hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, I was mentioning that that was the situation. But in 1980s, we began considering the border issue from purely management perspective. How to manage the border dispute. We have gone beyond that, and Dr. Jaishankar mentioned repeatedly that unless until peace and tranquility is on the border, progress.
All right, we'll try and fix that audio. I think there's a problem in Dr. Kondapalli's audio. But let me get Achal Malhotra and Alok Bansal in on that. Border management, does that seem to be, Captain Bansal, the only way forward till the differential in power balance is more equalized? In on that. Border management, does that seem to be, Captain Bansal, the only way forward?
And at least on the map we can promulgate, because as of now we have also not done it, and then put the pressure on Chinese to actually do so. Because till the time line of actual control is actually accepted and delineated on map and demarcated on ground, this sort of issues will continue. So I think we have been asking China to do so. China has been reluctant. One way of putting pressure could be to unilaterally delineate on map and promulgate it. That will put pressure. We are already there in strength. We are building up the infrastructure, and it doesn't make sense to get into a bigger confrontation when you are still in the building up stage. More significantly, neither China nor India is interested in a confrontation at this stage.
Sure.
We have adequate deterrence, and we are deterring them adequately. And I think this we have shown both in Galwan as well as in Tawang. And I think Chinese understand. I think this issue, they are beginning to understand. It's beginning to bite them. And I think diplomatically, what we need to do is, I think we could probably promulgate the line of actual control unilaterally. That would put some pressure on China. I think
Achal Malhotra,
they would be forced to, I think, come up with their version of line of actual control. And then
if India were to, let's say in Parliament, demarcate officially the line of actual control, as it were, will that then force the Chinese hand, as it were? Also, I keep going back to this. India is not the only country that China has, a border dispute with. Why not India reach out to countries like Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, a whole bunch of countries that have border disputes with China, far graver ones where they've been reclaiming islands, they've been building airstrips there, so on and so forth. If Achal Malhotra can hear me, then let him take that question. If not, can you hear me, Mr. Malhotra? All right, then let's get to General Malik on that, and then I'll close after that. Yeah, General Malik.
Yeah, I think we have to adopt a holistic approach. And by now, it should be quite clear to everyone, politically, militarily, that China is continuing to play the game that they have been doing for such a long time. And now it has become even more intense than it was, say, a decade ago. And all the measures, both economically, politically, and diplomatically, we have to expand our influence wherever possible and be firm against any of these activities that the Chinese undertake along the border, militarily as well as diplomatically.
All right. I think it was Deng Xiaoping, ironically, who said, hide your claws and bide your time. As India builds up more and more infrastructure, right now, the infrastructure on the Chinese side is more because they had a head start. They've been doing this for a number of years. As long as that differential remains, and the attempt by India would be to decrease that differential, bring it on par, till such time India will have to do border management. India will have to manage these skirmishes that happen from time to time. And most importantly, like I said, India will need to find a way to holistically answer the China question, whether it's in the economic realm, the diplomatic realm, and of course, undoubtedly, the military realm, where our army and our Jawans are more than capable of matching the Chinese and meeting the Chinese challenge. We'll take a quick break. I want to thank all our guests, but on the other side, I want to bring you up to speed with the finer details of what exactly happened in Yangtze. This is the place of the attack that happened on the intervening night of 8th and 9th of December. Yangtze is barely 30 kilometers from Tawang. This was a hotly contested area in the past as well. What was the immediate provocation for this attack that happened last week? How did the Indian troops respond and respond in kind? And most importantly, what is likely to happen now in this eastern sector? Because Tawang, mind you, was hotly contested in '62 as well, and it is an important seat of Tibetan Buddhism. So all of that in an explainer format right on the other side. All right, as we take that break, that was the news until now. Right now, let's listen into some big news that we have for car owners.
A clash between the two sides since the Galwan Valley clash all the way back in June 2020, when you remember 20 Indian soldiers lost their lives. We have more breaking news here. We'll move to it very quickly. All right, more information coming in from government sources on the Tawang clash. This is what they're telling us. They're saying that in 2008, there was a Buddha statue in the Yangtze, which was broken by the PLA, that's the People Liberations Army, or the Chinese army. Since then, the area has been contested. Inputs suggest that the PLA tried to reclaim the area in the hope that the Indian army presence would be thin at this time of harsh, snowbound winter. The peak is at 17,000 feet, the plateau at 14,000, which is where the clash began. Now, my colleague Arunima is with us right now. She's going to be bringing us more such details. Arunima, the chief detail that we're revealing to our audience is that the PLA possibly tried to reclaim this area in the hope that the Indian army presence would be thin at this time because there is a harsh winter in that entire area. Could you bring our audiences more context to that piece of information?
So what government functionaries are telling us is that this area at 14,000 feet, this is an area of pilgrimage for the locals. Yangtze had a Buddha statue which people worshipped. It also has what locally is called the place of 1,000 waterfalls. It's a touristy area for locals there because of the high terrain at 14,000 feet. It's also a place of pilgrimage. And in 2008, China tried to push back Indian army from this point by breaking the Buddha statue and by restricting access. And since then, there have been repeated skirmishes where the People's Liberation Army has tried to dislodge Indian Army from that position. What functionaries tell me is that in the last 6 to 7 years, earlier Indian Army would only patrol this area, and in winter months during snowbound peaks, they would vacate. But in the last few years, they have continued to stay there even in the winter months. So I think Chinese army calculated that because it is snowbound right now, Indian army presence would be thin, and they would take advantage of the situation and capture our post and push back the claim line. But since Indian army was continuing to hold on, it led to clashes. There were about 300. The PLA soldiers were about 300. The Indian army refused to vacate the post, and that's why they got injured. About 9 of them with limb injuries, fractures, etc. were evacuated to a Guwahati hospital. The situation currently, as per government functionaries, is under control. Flag meeting has happened. Both sides have gone back to their position. Status quo has been restored. But it just shows that, repeated attempts are being made by China to reclaim parts of line of actual control, which they think is their territory.
Pallavi has been bringing details to us about possible moves pursued in the parliament by opposition parties like the Congress and a few minutes ago the AIMIM. Pallavi, over to you.
Well, as the government as sources are pointing out that it's not the first time these kind of clashes have taken place, and India has retaliated quite strongly. That's exactly the point which the Congress party and other opposition parties have been making, that there have been instances of these kind of clashes or attempts by Chinese to enter into Indian territory, but the government has always denied it, or government has said it's not really happened, and therefore this is the reason why there needs to be a debate and discussion. There have been multiple notices which have been served in both the houses of parliament and cutting across party lines. The Trinamool Congress, Owaisi, Congress party, all of them are in the mood to get out the government. One, they want a short duration discussion on this. Second, they want it to be concluded by a statement from the defense minister. And third, the prime minister must be present inside the house. In fact, the main target of attack is the prime minister, because they accuse him of hiding the facts, not admitting that these have been cases of clashes, what really is the extent of damage, and so on and so forth. So I think that the parliament reconvenes in an hour, less than an hour's time from now, we can see clashes taking place actually between the opposition and the government on both the houses.
Okay, Pallavi, thank you for bringing us that context. Let's go over now to our colleague Abhishek Jha. He's with us. He tracks the Ministry of External Affairs. Abhishek, since December 9th, can you walk us through the communication that's taken place between China and India? We obviously know of the defense communication that's in fact been taking place over the last year and a half. But since December 9th, what have we seen?
So far, there has not been any official release regarding whether any diplomatic negotiation or diplomatic talk took place between India and China in the aftermath of the December 9th clash that we have witnessed along line of actual control in Arunachal Pradesh. But we do know that Indian side and Chinese side have been regularly engaged on the issue of border clashes. There have been 17 rounds of core commando talks along the to sort out the border disputes, and there has also been diplomatic level engagements both in Delhi and Beijing, and also at the level of External Affairs Minister Wang Yi and from the Chinese side, and External Affairs Minister Jaishankar from the Indian side at various platforms where they have tried to negotiate how to maintain the status quo and how to take back the status of pre-Galwan level clash, that is April 22, 2020, when there was no transgression or no attempt to transgress from the Chinese side. But so far, in the wake of 9th December incident that we are talking currently, there has not been any official communication, if any diplomatic communication has been between the Delhi and Beijing.
Armed clashes took place between
So this latest clash that happened between Indian and Chinese troops comes 2 years after what we saw in Galwan. It's important to understand where this happened. It's happened in a place called Yangtze, and let's try and sort of locate Yangtze on a map in the eastern sector for you. It's very close to Tawang. It's about 25-30 kilometers northeast of Tawang. Remember, Tawang is the last big command headquarters that we have as far as the eastern side is concerned, the eastern sector is concerned. Remember, both India and China have been building infrastructure, particularly the Chinese side, heavy-duty infrastructure leading all the way up to some villages on the other side of Yangtze. India too has been building a new road in a place called Bamla, east of Bamla, and before this clash point that happened in Yangtze. So there has been massive infrastructure build up by both sides on either side of this clash site called Yangtze. Now the important thing to understand is that this clash, this happened on the intervening night between 8th and 9th of December. This was last week. It happened at 3 a.m. and we're given to understand that about 300 Chinese PLA soldiers, that's not a small number, 300 Chinese PLA soldiers in the dead of the night at 3 in the morning tried to capture the icy heights. Remember, these heights are 15,000 feet, 17,000 feet. The attempt was to try and capture the heights and get area domination around the Yangtze. Now, why this is important is if either side manages to capture these heights, like I said, the plateaus here are 10,000, 12,000 feet, and the peaks, the heights, are at anywhere between 15 to 17,000 feet. If either side manages to capture this, and remember this is disputed site, all along the 3,500 kilometer line of actual control that runs all the way from Ladakh in the western sector all the way up to Tawang in the eastern sector, there are about 20 to 25 recognized disputed spots. Yangtze happens to be one of them. If either side captures Yangtze, then what it means is it gives you visibility, the area domination, the height advantage. It gives you visibility for about 25 to 30 kilometers on either side, on the Indian side as well as on the Chinese side. What this means is then in these harsh climatic conditions where snow sometimes can reach about 7-10 inches, in these harsh climatic conditions, there is no need for daily patrolling on the ground because you get clear visibility on either side. You can, from Yangtze, from the heights of Yangtze, you can see all the way up to Tawang. So it is important that that height domination and area domination be established. So what the Chinese soldiers were trying to do on that intervening night between 8th and 9th of December was to capture the heights of Yangtze. Now, this is not the first time that this place, Yangtze, has been a site of dispute between Indian and Chinese troops. This same place, the Chinese troops had tried something similar at a much smaller scale, though, in October of 2021, that was last year. Similarly, they had done so in 2016 as well. Now, that time too was around that October-November period. Why they're doing this now at this point of time is once the snow sets in, the terrain is very difficult, the weather is inclement, you cannot move around these areas very easily. It's very difficult to move large number of troops. Therefore, they were looking for that height advantage. And like I said, Yangtze is already one of the recognized disputed sites along the 3,500 kilometer line of actual control. Now, the modus operandi, and this is where it gets interesting. The question that Indian authorities are asking themselves is, was this similar to the modus operandi that we saw in Galwan, and is that now a new normal with the Chinese, or is there something less localized as far as this is concerned? The similar modus operandi, there were no lethal weapons, no guns, no armaments of any nature that were used. It was clubs, machetes, sticks. There were 6 Indian soldiers who were grievously injured. They had to be flown out from Yangtze to the field hospital in Guwahati. We're given to understand from top army sources that there is a higher number of PLA soldiers too who have been injured. Remember, there were about 300 who came. The Indian side immediately called for reinforcements. There were close to 100, 150 Indian soldiers who came within a few minutes of that call, and then they chased the Chinese all the way back to their command post, which is on the other side of this disputed site. So the injuries also mark the kind of weapons that were used, the bruises that we saw, the black eyes, the fractures. So like I said, 6 Indian soldiers are getting treatment at the field hospital in Guwahati. Now, what is important to understand is China has been building, on its side of the Yangtze, it has been building what are called these settler villages. What it essentially does is it takes a large number of these veterans or people who have served in the paramilitary forces in China and settles them in these so-called settler villages. On the other side of Yangtze is a village called Xiaokang, which is being used as a launch pad. That's the fear. There are about 600 such settler villages all the way from eastern Ladakh in the western sector, in the middle sector, in Himachal and in Uttarakhand, and of course eventually in Tawang in the eastern sector. These 600 villages, and this is what Indian Army veterans and people in the forces also believe, that these villages, these settler villages like Shaokang on the opposite side of Yangtze, are being used in a way by the Chinese PLA troops to try and use them as launch pads for these kind of stealth operations. Remember, salami slicing has been happening in all three sectors. It is a playbook that the Chinese have sort of perfected, particularly in the disputes that we're seeing in the South and East China Seas. Now, Tawang is important not just for military reasons, but also for political reasons. It's one of the most sacred places in Tibetan Buddhism. In fact, the Tibetans believe that the 6th Dalai Lama actually was born in Tawang. The monastery there in Tawang is one of the holiest shrines for Tibetan Buddhists. There is also a belief amongst the Tibetan Buddhists that the successor to the current Dalai Lama, remember, he's of advanced age, the successor to the current Dalai Lama could potentially hail from Tawang. It's a secretive process, it's a meditative process. They go on for a number of days until, of course, they get a sign as to who the Dalai Lama has reincarnated in and as. So potentially, the successor to the current Dalai Lama could come from Tawang. So for political reasons as well, Tawang is absolutely essential, both for India as well as for China. Now, if you go back and check in history, even in 1962, much of the war was actually focused in this belt, in the eastern sector, as it were. The Chinese, in fact, came all the way from their side, from across the Yangtze River. They came down these icy peaks, capturing Bomla, Zumla, and then finally all the way down south to Tawang. They had captured Tawang, they had held area control of Tawang, but eventually, within 10 days, they relinquished it and they went back onto the other side of Yangtze, this disputed site, as it were. So the important thing is that for the Chinese, and remember, particularly in the last 10, 15 years or so, from 2008-9 onwards, every time a senior government official from India would visit Tawang, the Chinese would make a huge hue and cry about it. They refer to Tawang as part of southern Tibet. And like I said, for not just military reasons, but for political reasons as well, the Chinese have never really given up their claim on Tawang. The important question is this. The incident that happened at Yangtze, the trigger factor of these launch pads, because it's not just here at Yangtze where these launch pads are there, it's there all across the line of actual control. And second, the modus operandi. Remember, the 93 and 96 agreements bar Indian and Chinese troops from opening fire. The last big fire happened in Samudrongchu in 1986. But are they bypassing that? Are they diverting from that by using clubs and machetes? And is this now a new modus operandi? These are the larger policy questions, military, tactical questions as well, that the Indian Defence Forces and, of course, the political leadership will have to contend with. But one thing is very, very clear. The Chinese are not going to sit still. In Galwan, it happened 2 years ago. In Yangtze, it's happened just this past week. If this is a new normal, if this is a new pattern, then surely the Indian Defence Forces will be well prepared for it.
भारतीय सेना ने बहादुरी से पीएलए को हमारी टेरिटरी में अतिक्रमण करने से रोका और उन्हें उनकी पोस्ट पर वापस जाने के लिए मजबूर कर दिया।
Minister gave a statement whereby he just gave the bare bone details of what exactly transpired at Yangtze when the clash took place. But there is a need for a wider and a deeper discussion on why China is doing that.
जब तक भारतीय जनता पार्टी की मोदी सरकार चल रही है, 1 इंच जमीन पर भी कोई कब्जा नहीं कर सकता।
भारतीय सेना ने बहादुरी से पीएलए को हमारी टेरिटरी में अतिक्रमण करने से रोका और उन्हें उनकी पोस्ट पर वापस जाने के लिए मजबूर कर दिया। अध्यक्ष महोदय, हमारे किसी भी सैनिक की न तो मृत्यु हुई है और न ही कोई गंभीर रूप से घायल हुआ है।
अरे उसका इसका क्या संबंध है? तुम अगर हमारी गलती है तो फांसी पे लगा, लेकिन इससे क्यों जोड़ रहे हैं? देश की सुरक्षा है।
But there is a need for a wider and a deeper discussion on why China is doing that.
कांग्रेस सरकार ने चीन की धमकी के बाद हमारे रोड और वाइटल बॉर्डर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर्स का निर्माण डैम चौक में रोक दिया।
Hello everyone, you're watching News Epicenter with me, Maria Shakil. For the first time since Galwan, clashes between India and Chinese troops were reported in Arunachal Pradesh, Tawang sector, where both sides engaged in a face-off on December 9. The standoff took place at 3 a.m. in the morning when Chinese troops armed with clubs similar to Galwan confronted the Indian forces. Reports suggest around 6 Indian soldiers were hurt and they are receiving treatment in Guwahati, while there were more injuries on the Chinese side. After first accusing India of provoking Chinese troops, the Chinese government has now called for cooperation for better border management, calling for improved dialogue to prevent future scuffles. Remember, this also comes as the Air Force had to scramble jets in the last few weeks to prevent air violations by China over Arunachal Pradesh. But clearly, China was caught off guard by how well prepared India was, given the nature of intelligence that we had managed to gather, as it tried to repeat the Galwan face-off. Here is an overview of what really happened. It was a stealth operation by Chinese troops as they unilaterally tried to change the status quo. On 9th at 3 a.m., over 300 PLA troops intervened in Yangtze, that is the region near Tawang. There was an attempt to capture the icy height at 17,000 feet. India has an advantage because it is India which is actually patrolling at that height. Initially, there were only 50 Indian troops. Reinforcements were rushed in immediately and over 100 Indian troops gathered when they saw the presence of the Chinese in the Indian territory. And the Indian army then pushed back hard against the Chinese troops. The Chinese soldiers were given a bloody nose. The PLA was pushed back all the way to their command post. A warning was issued in a flag meeting 2 days later. So today, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh addressed both the Houses of Parliament over the clash in the Tawang sector. Rajnath Singh said that China attempted to change the status quo, but the attempt was foiled by our troops. Soon after his statement, ruckus erupted in Parliament after the opposition demanded a discussion, accusing the government of hiding the facts, demanding a deeper discussion, a more elaborate discussion on the situation at the line of actual control. Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge hit out at the Prime Minister, saying that China is taking shelter behind a statement where he has said that no one has entered Indian territory. Home Minister Amit Shah hit back at the Congress, accusing it of keeping the military infrastructure at the LAC in shambles while inking deals with the Chinese Communist Party. India may have given a bloody nose to China, but the political war at home here in India is only escalating.
पीएलए ट्रुप्स ने तवांग सेक्टर के यांगसे एरिया में लाइन ऑफ एक्चुअल कंट्रोल पर अतिक्रमण कर स्टेटस को एक तरफा बदलने का प्रयास किया। चाइना के इस प्रयास का हमारी सेना ने दृढ़ता के साथ सामना किया है। अध्यक्ष महोदय,
Defence Minister Rajnath Singh informing Parliament that Indian soldiers thwarted attempts by Chinese troops to unilaterally change the status quo in Arunachal Pradesh, Tawang, last week and compelled them to return to their posts. During the confrontation, clashes broke out between the Indian and Chinese side. It happened in a place called Yangtze, about 30 kilometers northwest of Tawang. India has been building border infrastructure here, so have the Chinese. The clash happened on the night between 8th and 9th December. About 300 Chinese troops tried to capture icy heights around Yangtze. If either side manages to capture the heights at 17,000 feet, it would give them visibility up to 25 to 30 kilometers on either side. Hence, there's no need for patrolling in the harsh winter months. More than 2 years after the deadly Galwan clashes, Chinese troops turned to the same playbook. While no lethal weapons were used, the LA troops were armed with clubs, sticks and machetes. Around 6 soldiers were injured on the Indian side. The number of injuries on the Chinese side are believed to be far more.
भारतीय सेना ने बहादुरी से पीएलए को हमारी टेरिटरी में अतिक्रमण करने से रोका और उन्हें उनकी पोस्ट पर वापस जाने के लिए मजबूर कर दिया। अध्यक्ष महोदय, हमारे किसी भी सैनिक की न तो मृत्यु हुई है और न ही कोई गंभीर रूप से घायल हुआ है।
But while India stood firm amid Chinese aggression, the opposition saw opportunity to target the government.
And why I say that is that why are they hiding behind the bravery of our Indian soldiers? Where is their political leadership? Where is their bravery?
But there is a need for a wider and a deeper discussion on why China is doing that.
Home Minister Amit Shah countered Congress with this big attack.
कांग्रेस सरकार ने चीन की धमकी के बाद हमारे रोड और वाइटल बॉर्डर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर्स का निर्माण डैम चौक में रोक दिया कि राजीव गांधी फाउंडेशन को 2005-6 और 2006-7 के वित्तीय साल में चीनी दूतावास से 1,35,00,000 रुपए का अनुदान प्राप्त हुआ था।
अरे उसका इसका क्या संबंध है? तुम अगर हमारी गलती है तो फांसी पे लगाओ, लेकिन इससे क्यों जोड़ रहे हो? देश की सुरक्षा है।
As the war of words continues, are we headed for a full-blown conflict with China?
And in the wake of the Tawang clashes, Indian Air Force is scheduled to carry out a consolidated training exercise this week in the eastern sector. In fact, all the key eastern Air Force stations which are located in Assam, which is Tezpur AFS, Jorat AFS, Mohanbari and Chabua in Dibrugarh district will be participating in this training exercise. Is this really linked to the developments in Tawang? We are being joined by Akash on the phone line. Akash, give us the details. Is this really a routine exercise planned in advance?
Maria, it's true that it's a routine exercise, but given the condition and given the clash, it is very important. In fact, we have been given to understand that this exercise is scheduled this week and it is going to happen in the eastern sector. And Maria, it is important because, just a few hours back, we have informed our viewers that how China was constantly violating our airspace, how their